Jack Bennett wiped the grease off his hands with a worn rag as he finished tightening a bolt on an old pickup truck. The day had been slow at Bennett's garage, the kind of small-town auto repair shop where every customer was a neighbor or friend. Jack, in his early 40s with streaks of gray in his dark hair, was the kind of man people trusted. Honest, skilled, and humble, he ran the shop alone since his father's passing 5 years ago. Business wasn't booming, but Jack never turned anyone away, even if they couldn't pay right away. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Jack glanced at the ancient landline mounted on the wall and sighed, thinking it was probably another telemarketer. But something told him to answer. Bennett's garage. Jack speaking, he said, his voice calm but with a tinge of weariness. A soft, slightly nervous voice came through the receiver. Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have a flat tire. I'm on Route 16, just past the old Sinclair station. I don't know how to change it, and I don't have anyone to call. Can you help? Jack leaned back, glancing out the shop's open bay doors. The day was warm, with a light breeze rustling the trees. Route 16 wasn't too far. He could be there in 15 minutes. No problem, Ma, he replied, his tone reassuring. I'll be right there. Sit tight and stay safe by your car. I'll bring my tools. The woman on the other end sounded relieved. Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Jack hung up and grabbed his toolbox. The truck he'd been working on could wait a little longer. As he hopped into his old Ford F-150, his dog, Max, a golden retriever with a permanent air of cheerfulness, jumped into the passenger seat. Max had been Jack's companion for years, always eager to tag along. The drive to Route 16 was peaceful, the scenery dotted with rolling hills and open fields. Jack let his thoughts wander. He knew what it felt like to need a hand. Growing up, his family had struggled to make ends meet, but his father had always taught him to help others when he could. Kindness doesn't cost a dime, son, but it's worth more than gold, his father used to say. As he approached the Sinclair station, Jack spotted a sleek black car pulled off on the shoulder. A woman in her early 30s stood by the car, looking a little out of place against the rural backdrop. She wore a tailored white blouse and navy slacks, her hair neatly tied back, but her expression was one of discomfort. She glanced at her phone, then at the flat tire, clearly unsure of what to do. Jack pulled over, parking a short distance behind her car. Max hopped out first, tail wagging, and the woman smiled faintly as the dog approached her. Is he friendly? She asked. Jack nodded as he grabbed his toolbox from the truck bed. Friendly as they come. Name's Jack, by the way. You must be the one who called. Yes, I'm Rebecca, she replied, extending a hand. Her handshake was firm, but Jack noticed a slight tremor in her fingers. Thank you so much for coming. I wasn't sure who else to call. No trouble at all, Jack said. He walked over to assess the situation. The car was a late-model luxury sedan, and the flat tire looked beyond repair, shredded along the sidewall. Looks like this tire's done for. Do you have a spare in the trunk? Rebecca hesitated, her brow furrowing. I think so, but I don't know how to check. Jack gave her a reassuring smile. No worries, that's what I'm here for. As he opened the trunk and located the spare, he noticed the interior of the car was spotless, almost as if it had just rolled off the dealership lot. Rebecca stood to the side, looking a little uncomfortable, and Jack wondered if she wasn't used to this kind of situation. This won't take long, he said as he set to work. Jack made small talk while he worked, asking where she was headed. I'm just passing through, Rebecca replied vaguely, avoiding details. It's been a long drive. Jack didn't press her. Everyone had their reasons for keeping quiet. Instead, he talked about Max and how the dog had become his partner in crime at the shop. The light conversation seemed to put Rebecca at ease, and by the time Jack tightened the last lug nut on the spare tire, she was smiling more genuinely. There you go, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Good as new, at least until you can get a proper replacement. The spare should hold up for a while. Rebecca's relief was palpable. I don't know how to thank you. You really saved me. Jack waved off her gratitude. Just glad I could help. That's what neighbors are for, right? Rebecca hesitated, then reached into her purse. She pulled out a sleek black wallet and opened it, but Jack held up a hand. No need for that, he said. Just pay it forward someday when you get the chance. Rebecca blinked, as if surprised. Are you sure? You came all the way out here and… I'm sure, Jack interrupted gently. Take care of yourself and drive safe. Rebecca stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Thank you, Jack. Really. As she got back into her car and drove off, Jack felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. It wasn't the first time he'd helped a stranger, and it wouldn't be the last. He loaded his tools back into the truck, whistled for Max, and started the drive back to the garage. What Jack didn't know was that his simple act of kindness had set something extraordinary into motion. The days rolled on at Bennett's garage, blending into the rhythm of small-town life. Jack carried on fixing cars, greeting familiar faces, and balancing the shop's modest finances. Business was steady but far from thriving. And some nights Jack stayed late at the shop, tinkering with side projects to make ends meet. Despite the long hours, he never let the weight of life dampen his spirit. Max, ever loyal, lay by his side, his presence a quiet comfort. A week after helping Rebecca on Route 16, Jack was elbowed deep in the engine of an old station wagon when a delivery truck pulled up outside the shop. A courier in a crisp uniform approached, holding a clipboard and a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Jack Bennett, the courier asked. That's me, Jack replied, wiping his hands on his overalls as he stepped forward. The courier handed him the box and asked for a signature. Jack scribbled his name and watched as the truck pulled away. He examined the package, frowning. It was addressed simply to Jack Bennett, Bennett's garage, with no return address. Curious, he set the box on his workbench and carefully opened it. Inside was a neatly folded envelope resting atop a pair of shiny, high-tech diagnostic tools. Jack's jaw dropped. These tools were the kind he'd only dreamed of owning, state-of-the-art equipment far beyond his budget. He opened the envelope, finding a handwritten note inside. Jack. Thank you for your kindness and generosity. The world needs more people like you. I hope these tools make your job a little easier. Warm regards. Rebecca. Jack leaned against the workbench, stunned. He'd never expected anything in return for helping her, let alone something so thoughtful and expensive. He ran his fingers over the tools, marveling at their quality. They would save him hours of work, allowing him to diagnose and repair vehicles faster and more accurately. Max, he said, glancing at the dog, who wagged his tail lazily. Looks like our little favor just paid off in a big way. For the next few days, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca's gesture. He told a few friends and customers about it, leaving out the part about how much the tools must have cost. He felt a renewed sense of energy, tackling repairs with greater efficiency and enthusiasm. Word began to spread in the community about the upgraded service at Bennett's garage, and soon Jack found himself busier than he'd been in months. One afternoon, as he finished installing a new battery in Mrs. Taylor's minivan, the garage phone rang again. It was Rebecca. Hi, Jack, she said, her voice warm but tentative. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all, Jack replied, genuinely glad to hear from her. I was just thinking about you, actually. Those tools you sent, they're incredible. You didn't have to do that. Rebecca laughed softly. It was the least I could do. Listen, I was wondering if I could stop by the garage tomorrow. I'd like to thank you in person, and maybe talk about something. Jack hesitated, curious but unsure. Sure, swing by anytime. I'll be here. The next day, Rebecca arrived in the late afternoon, driving the same sleek black car, now sporting a brand new tire. She stepped out, looking more relaxed than the last time Jack had seen her. She carried a small bag and greeted Max with a pat on the head before turning to Jack. "It's good to see you," she said with a smile. "You too," Jack replied. "What brings you by?" Rebecca glanced around the garage, her eyes taking in the cluttered but functional workspace. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other day about paying kindness forward. You helped me when I really needed it, and it reminded me of something my father used to say." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "He always told me that you can measure a person's worth by how they treat others when there's nothing to gain," she said. "And you're one of the good ones." Jack felt a blush creep up his neck. "I just did what anyone should do. Nothing special." Rebecca shook her head. "It is special. Not everyone takes the time to help a stranger. I wanted to ask if you'd let me do something more to help you." Jack frowned. "Rebecca, the tools were more than enough." "Really?" "I know," she said, holding up a hand. "But I have an idea, and I think you'll like it. I want to help your business grow. Would you let me?" Jack hesitated. "Grow? How do you mean?" Rebecca smiled, her enthusiasm growing. "I'll explain everything. Let's sit down and talk." Jack led her to a small desk in the corner of the shop, cluttered with invoices and coffee mugs. Over the next hour, Rebecca laid out her thoughts. She didn't share too much about herself but spoke with conviction about how Jack could expand his reach, update his equipment further, and even hire a second mechanic to lighten his workload. She promised to support the effort, though she kept the specifics vague. Jack listened intently, torn between gratitude and disbelief. "Why would you go out of your way to do this for me? We barely know each other." Rebecca's smile softened. "Because people like you remind me of what's important. And because I believe in what you're doing." Jack didn't know what to say. The idea of growth was exciting, but it also felt overwhelming. For now, he decided to take it one step at a time. "Let's see where this goes," he said finally. "But no promises." "That's all I ask," Rebecca replied, her expression full of quiet determination. As Rebecca left the garage, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something big was on the horizon. But he still had no idea just how much his life was about to change. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca became a frequent visitor to Bennett's garage. She stopped by to check on Jack's progress, often bringing coffee or a home-cooked lunch for him and Max. True to her word, she helped Jack organize the shop and taught him a few tricks to streamline his business. Jack couldn't help but notice that she seemed comfortable taking charge, her confidence shining through in the way she spoke and carried herself. He began to wonder about her background but never pried. One crisp autumn morning, Rebecca arrived with a portfolio tucked under her arm. She handed it to Jack with a knowing smile. "What's this?" he asked, flipping it open. Inside were detailed plans for modernizing the garage, upgraded equipment, a refreshed look for the shop, and a breakdown of costs. "It's a proposal," Rebecca said. "I've been thinking about how to make your business more sustainable. These are just ideas, but I thought they might help." Jack stared at the plans, impressed but overwhelmed. "This is incredible, Rebecca, but where would I even begin? I can't afford half of this stuff." Rebecca hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Jack, there's something I need to tell you." Jack looked up, puzzled. "You've probably guessed by now that I'm not from around here," she began, her voice steady but measured. "What I haven't told you is why. I'm not just passing through. I came to this town because I was looking for something, or maybe trying to escape something." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued but confused. "I run a successful company," she admitted, her cheeks flushing slightly. "It's not something I usually talk about, but I've done well for myself. I built it from the ground up, and it's given me a life I never dreamed of." Jack blinked, processing her words. "Wait, you mean you're—" Rebecca nodded. "A millionaire, yes. Probably more, depending on how you measure it. But that's not why I'm here." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "I came to this town because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be part of something real. Somewhere along the way, I lost touch with the things that matter. When my tire blew out and you helped me without expecting anything in return, it reminded me of who I used to be." Jack leaned back in his chair, stunned. "Rebecca, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied quickly. "I just thought you should know the truth before we move forward. I want to invest in your garage, Jack. Not as some corporate project, but as a way to give back. You've got something special here, a connection to this community that money can't buy. I want to help you build on that." Jack rubbed the back of his neck, trying to wrap his head around the revelation. "This is a lot to take in. I mean, I appreciate everything you've done already, but are you sure about this? Why me?" Rebecca smiled, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Because you didn't judge me when you saw me stranded on the side of the road. You didn't care who I was or what I could do for you. You just helped. That kind of kindness is rare, and it's worth investing in." Jack felt a lump rise in his throat. For years, he'd struggled to keep the garage afloat, always putting others' needs before his own. The idea that someone saw value in what he was doing enough to back it with more than just words was almost too much to believe. "I don't know what to say," he murmured finally. "Say you'll think about it," Rebecca said with a smile. "No pressure, no strings. Just consider it." Jack nodded, still dazed. "I'll think about it." As Rebecca left that day, Jack sat in the quiet of the garage, Max resting at his feet. The weight of her words hung in the air. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine what could be a future where the garage wasn't just surviving but thriving. But even as hope flickered, doubt crept in. Could he really accept help on such a grand scale? Would it change who he was, or what the garage stood for? Jack didn't have the answers yet, but he knew one thing for sure. Rebecca's kindness wasn't just about money, it was about seeing potential where others saw struggle. And that, he realized, was worth holding on to. The weeks following Rebecca's revelation were a whirlwind for Jack. He wrestled with the idea of accepting her help, torn between gratitude and pride. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, Max curled up beside him, as he debated the risks and rewards. He'd always been self-reliant, the kind of man who believed in earning every inch of progress. Accepting an investment, especially one of this scale, felt like uncharted territory. But Rebecca was patient. She didn't push or pressure him, instead stopping by the garage to chat and offer her thoughts when Jack seemed ready to listen. Her genuine enthusiasm for the project began to ease Jack's doubts. One crisp morning, Jack made his decision. Rebecca arrived at the garage as she often did, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She was greeted by Max's wagging tail and Jack's easy smile. "I've thought it through," Jack said, taking one of the cups from her. "Let's do it. But on one condition." Rebecca tilted her head, intrigued. "What's that?" "I want to make sure this stays grounded," Jack said. "I don't want to turn this place into some flashy operation that forgets the people it's here to serve. This garage has always been about helping folks who need it, no matter what they can pay. If we're going to grow, I want to keep that at the heart of everything we do." Rebecca smiled warmly. "Jack, that's exactly why I want to help. We'll keep it real, I promise. This is your dream, I'm just here to help it along." With that, they got to work. Rebecca's investment wasn't just financial, it was hands-on. Together they planned the renovations and upgrades, keeping the essence of the garage intact while modernizing where it mattered. Jack enlisted the help of local contractors, insisting on hiring people from the community to support the town's economy. The first visible change was the sign. The old wooden one, which had hung crookedly for years, was replaced with a sleek but simple design that read "Bennett's Garage, where neighbors come first." Jack insisted on keeping the tagline Rebecca had suggested. Inside the garage, new equipment began to arrive: lifts, diagnostic machines, and tools Jack could only dream of owning before. But what excited him most was the new community service bay. It was Rebecca's idea, a dedicated area for customers who wanted to learn basic car maintenance or couldn't afford full-service repairs. Jack called it the Kindness Corner, and it quickly became a hit. Rebecca was there every step of the way, pitching in where she could and even learning a thing or two about cars. Despite her polished demeanor, she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Jack found himself admiring her work ethic and genuine care for others. Ever think about switching careers? He joked one afternoon as they installed a new shelving unit. Rebecca laughed, brushing a stray hair from her face. I think I'll stick to my day job, but this has been more rewarding than I ever expected. As the garage transformed, so did Jack's confidence. For years, he'd seen himself as just a mechanic, but now he was beginning to realize the impact of his work. Customers who had once struggled to pay were now bringing their friends and family to the shop, drawn by its reputation for honesty and community spirit. One evening, after a long day of work, Rebecca and Jack sat on a bench outside the garage, watching the sunset. Max lay at their feet, content as always. You know, Rebecca said, breaking the comfortable silence, this place feels like it belongs in one of those heartwarming stories you read about. A small-town garage that becomes the soul of the community. Jack chuckled. I never thought of it that way. I just fix cars and try to do right by people. Rebecca turned to him, her expression serious. Jack, it's more than that. You've created something special here. It's not just about cars, it's about people. You remind them that kindness and integrity still exist. Jack didn't know how to respond. Instead, he looked out at the glowing horizon, feeling a rare sense of contentment. The garage's transformation wasn't without challenges. There were moments of doubt, unexpected expenses, and long nights spent solving problems. But with Rebecca's guidance and Jack's unwavering determination, they overcame each obstacle. Slowly but surely, the garage became a beacon in the town, not just for car repairs but for the values it represented. Rebecca had given Jack the tools, both literal and metaphorical, to build something far greater than he had ever imagined. And Jack, in turn, had reminded Rebecca of the beauty in simplicity and the power of genuine connection. As the first snowfall of the season dusted the ground, Jack looked around his bustling shop with a sense of pride. He had no idea that fixing a stranger's flat tire would lead to all of this. But sometimes, as his father had always said, kindness was worth more than gold. Winter settled over the town, blanketing it in a layer of snow that glistened under the pale sunlight. Jack found himself busier than ever, not just with customers but also with new responsibilities. The garage had grown into something he could be proud of, a place where anyone could find help, no matter their circumstances. With Rebecca's investment and guidance, the business was thriving, but it remained true to its roots. On a frosty morning, Jack stood by the wood-burning stove in the corner of the garage, sipping a cup of coffee as he reviewed his schedule. Max dozed by the warmth of the fire, his golden coat glowing in the light. The steady hum of activity filled the shop, wrenches turning, tires rolling, and laughter echoing as Jack's new apprentice, Danny, cracked jokes with a customer. Danny was one of Jack's first hires, a young man fresh out of high school who'd been struggling to find direction. When Jack had offered him a job, Danny had jumped at the chance. Over the months, Jack had mentored him, teaching him not just the mechanics of cars but the importance of honesty and hard work. Rebecca arrived mid-morning, her cheeks pink from the cold. She carried a tray of pastries from the local bakery, a habit she'd developed since becoming part of the garage's extended family. Morning, Jack, she called, setting the tray on the counter. Morning, Jack replied, grinning. You're spoiling us again. Rebecca shrugged, her smile playful. Consider it fuel for all the good work you're doing. As the day wore on, customers came and went, each one leaving with more than just a fixed car. The garage had become a gathering place, a hub of connection and kindness. Rebecca had even started organizing monthly workshops in the Kindness Corner, teaching people basic car maintenance skills. One afternoon, Jack noticed a man lingering near the entrance, hesitating to step inside. He was bundled in a threadbare coat, his face lined with weariness. Jack approached him with his usual easy manner. Can I help you with something? Jack asked. The man shifted uncomfortably. I don't have much money, but my car won't start. I need it to get to work. And Jack held up a hand, cutting him off gently. Let's take a look. We'll figure it out. The man's relief was immediate, his shoulders relaxing as he followed Jack to the car. It was moments like these that reminded Jack why he did what he did. Later that evening, after the shop had closed, Rebecca stayed behind to help Jack tidy up. As they worked side by side, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You've done something amazing here, Jack," she said. "This garage isn't just a business anymore. It's a part of the community." Jack chuckled, brushing dust off his hands. "Couldn't have done it without you." Rebecca shook her head. "You were already doing it long before I showed up. All I did was give you the tools to take it further." Jack looked at her. Gratitude etched into his features. "You gave me more than that, Rebecca. You believed in me when I wasn't sure I could do it myself. That means more than I can say." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the quiet hum of the heater the only sound. "You know," Rebecca said finally, her voice softer, "when I first came to this town, I was looking for something I thought I'd lost. Success is great, but it can be isolating. I didn't realize how much I needed this to feel connected to people again. You gave that back to me." Jack smiled. "Guess we both needed a little reminder about what really matters." As the months passed, the garage continued to grow, but it never lost its heart. Jack and Rebecca remained partners in the truest sense, their friendship rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision. The Kindness Corner became a symbol of hope in the community, and people from neighboring towns began to take notice. One sunny spring day, Jack stood outside the garage, looking at the new sign with pride. The shop was bustling, Danny was thriving in his role, and the community was stronger than ever. Rebecca joined him, her hands in her pockets as she surveyed the scene. "You've built something incredible here, Jack," she said. "We've built something," he corrected, his smile warm. Rebecca nodded, her heart full. She had come to the town looking for connection, and she had found it in abundance. For Jack, what had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a journey that reshaped his life, and the lives of countless others. As they stood together, Max wagging his tail at their feet, Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His father's words echoed in his mind: kindness doesn't cost a dime, but it's worth more than gold. Jack had always believed it, but now he understood it in a way he never had before. Sometimes, one small act of compassion could change everything. And for Jack, Rebecca, and their little garage on the edge of town, it had.